cup. My name is Debbie Monsiv. I'm the president of the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society. Yay. And we partner with Downtown Cottage Grove to put this on. And I want to thank Bart for this wonderful venue. This building is fantastic. I want to thank Jim Lockhart for his video experience. He's putting these together, and they go on the CG Genealogy YouTube channel. And we uploaded Dana's March presentation last night. So it's up there live. I want to thank Seth for the sound. Thank you. So in Cottage Grove, we have a loose group called the Partners in History. And we all collaborate and work together to preserve and protect the history of Cottage Grove. And they are the Cottage Grove Historical Museum, the Cottage Grove Genealogical Society, the Oregon Aviation Historical Society, the Cottage Grove Historical Society, the Cottage Grove City Library, Bohemian Mining Museum, and Singing Creek. Yes. And if anybody's interested in volunteering, any one of those organizations, I'm sure, has an opportunity for you. And I will say that the Genealogical Society also has opportunities that you can do from home. So if you're interested in knowing about that opportunity, let me know. And I've said it many times, but I'm going to say it again. The Woodard Family Foundation was very generous this year, a year ago, and they donated enough funds for us to digitize 14,000 more pages of our local newspaper. Yes. And that's going to get us up through February 28th, 1957. We still have 60 years worth of papers to do. So if anybody's interested in donating to that effort, the Cottage Grove Museum has a fund for that. And thank you for anyone who has donated in the past. And so I'm going to do a selfless promotion. I'm the chair of the Goose Mural Committee, and we are selling raffle tickets, and I know Dana's been around, and those who have bought tickets, thank you so much. But there's an informational poster over here if anyone's interested in looking at it. So tonight, we are going to learn about a part of Cottage Grove history that I was possibly not born yet to even, I've heard about it all my life, but I didn't witness it. And it's the history of the Cottage Grove Regatta. Our presenter is Holli Turpin. Yeah. And Holly's been a volunteer at the Cottage Grove Historical Society for around 15 years and is currently serving as the president. She's also the administrative coordinator at Lane Community College here in Cottage Grove. Holly was born and raised in Cottage Grove. Well, she was born in Cottage Grove, raised in Culp Creek, and now living in Drain. She left the area in her 20s, spending time living in Eugene, Independence, Oregon. Is it Killeen or? Killeen. Killeen, Texas. But Cottage Grove area, it will always be home. So, Holly, thank you.
Yesterday, how many of you saw the partial eclipse? So it went totality right over Killeen. So I have all these friends back in Killeen who are posting all these beautiful pictures of totality, which I missed. I wish I'd gone over there and seen it. Okay, so thank you, Debbie, for the introduction. I'm going to talk to you today about the Cottage Grove Regatta, and it deals with Cottage Grove Lake. So there were other regattas. There was regattas at Dorena, there's regattas at lakes north of us, but we're going to focus on 4 years of the Cottage Grove Regatta here in Cottage Grove at Cottage Grove Lake. Can I say Cottage Grove enough? So I'm going to skip through the first slide other than to say Tara Sue helped me with the research. She was going to do the presentation, but is unable to, so I wanted to acknowledge her. And here's sort of what we're going to look at today. The lake itself, when it became a lake, because lo and behold, Cottage Grove was not always hosting a lake. So then we have the first year, it was not the regatta, it was called the picnic at the lake, the recreational picnic. Then we have the actual regattas to look at. So before we get started, you have an assignment. At your table groups, I want you to share, a couple of people in your table groups, to share your best memory or remembrance of the lake. Whichever lake, you can do Dorena, you can do Cold Creek. What did you like to do or still like to do at the lake? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to share that at your table. That brought up a few memories in your mind. I think most of us have spent time at the lakes and have fond memories of both lakes. So we're a little fuzzy there, but we tried to focus as best we could. So Cottage Grove Lake was practical, promising, and painful because most of you probably know there was a town that existed in the valley that now holds the lake. So we had a lot of donation land claim owners who staked their claims right along the river. And that was a nice flat valley backed up to the mountains, so you had access to the river that was year round. You had access to the woods with all the resources that the woods provided. And so there were little farms there all up and down that valley. And then the US government decided we need some flood control and we need to dam up some rivers. And Cottage Grove was one of those. So the city of Hebron was the town that lived there and all of its residents. So when they decided to put the lake where it is, all of those families had to move. Many of those families had been on that property for 100 years, because we're looking at donation land claims that came around 1850s, and we're now into the 1940s. So lots of family ancestral land, they've been on there for 100 years, and now they're told they have to leave. So there was a little bit of pain in the area when it came to getting Cottage Grove as a lake. Practical, because flood control. Cottage Grove flooded quite often. This here area on Main Street on a regular basis was underwater. The floor here you'd be sloshing through water on hard winters. So everyone downstream from Cottage Grove Lake benefited for the fact that they put the dam there and built the lake. And then promising, because what comes with lakes? All the memories you just shared, right? So you've got all those memories because they built a lake and you got to enjoy the lake. So good, bad, and ugly, there's Cottage Grove Lake. So I already talked about this. So part of a flood control project, the first lake to be built with the whole project, there was originally 13 lakes or dams they were putting in. Fern Ridge was the first one. Cottage Grove was the second one. So dam construction started in 1940. The plan was to build Cottage Grove and Dorena at about the same time frame, but because of events in 1941, Dorena Dam was put on hold. So Cottage Grove Lake, they pushed through. But as we all, I'm sure, are familiar if you're into history and that's why you're here, Pearl Harbor happened in 41. So then we became engrossed in a war in both the Pacific and the European fronts. And just a quick timeline, In May of 45, the European front ended. In August of 45, the Pacific front ended. But while we were in the throes of war, Cottage Grove was in an area that had the Pacific theater in the forefront of their minds. So you've got a community who has been dealing with blackout drills. Anyone know what blackout drills were? Okay. So turning off all your lights. The idea was if Japan flew some airplanes over to bomb, we didn't want them to see where the towns were, so they had to black it out. What was the other thing? Oh, plane spotters. We had plane spotters all along the valley looking for planes. We've got all of our, a lot of our able-bodied men and some women off at war. So we've got these years of intense fear and sorrow, and people are dying. It's not a good picture. So we've got sort of this depressing era during World War II while the dam was being finished. The dam was finished in 1942. So 42, 43, 44, 45, we've got a lake, but it's not being used. Everybody's too worried about other stuff. So war ends, everybody's happy, everybody's coming home, things are going back to normal, and a year later, August of 46, we decide to party at the lake, right? So the town has decided it needs to start using this lake for something good and fun. So the lake brings recreation. On this list, do your memories bring up things on this list? I mean, a lot of people do boating and fishing and camping, and everybody goes swimming at the lakes, right? Well, not if you're from Coal Creek, you swim up there, but that's beside the point. So one of the things the city decided to do was capitalize on the fact that we now have this lake. So they're trying to recover from the war, kind of regain some sense of control, and rebrand the town. So I found this article that is titled Cottage Grove City by the Lake. Doesn't that sound nice? By the lake. So I'm just going to read this really short part of it. So in this article it says, civilized man adjust. I love how they talk back then. The writer of this was very interesting. So civilized man adjusts rapidly to his surroundings, and all of this by way of saying that Cottage Grove has become a city by the lake, with a yachting regatta and everything, including beauteous queens. This is the weekend for the regatta at Cottage Grove, and the boat fanatics have gathered for the occasion. It is not only a great event, a big event for Cottage Grove, but for all of Lane County. And it gives us a preview of the future when there will be similar lakes throughout this whole great valley. So the war has ended, we're celebrating that we have a lake, and more dams are being put in downriver. So we're one of the first lakes to be able to be used in this way as they start building Dexter. They've already got Fern Ridge, but all the lakes up above. Okay? So the Cottage Grove Regatta was more than just boat races, though. The whole town got involved. It included boat races, so speedboats, onboarding, etc. But they also decided, let's have a parade. Let's do a pageant and have dances. And there was also a couple of years where they had a bunch of contests, log rolling, beer contests, all those kinds of things you might think of when you think of Bohemian mining days. So those sort of precursors to that. So 1946 was not officially a regatta. They didn't call it a regatta, but it was the same thing. It turned into a regatta the next year. They called it the Recreational Picnic at the Cottage Grove Lake. 85 boats participated, so it was a big event. Let me see. It was a single day, so it was August 1st only, and the recorded attendance was 6,747. So just for reference, In the 1940 census, Cottage Grove as a town had a population of 2,600. So we tripled in size. And then obviously in 1950 it had gone up to 3,500. But still, we're somewhere in the middle of those two numbers, and we brought in 6,000. In attendance was a state senator, and then representatives from Eugene and Cottage Grove and Springfield. Okay? So this is a big event. People are here to have some fun. That's all I have for the 46. 1947. So here we have 1,200 people in attendance. So we double in size in terms of who went to see the races. Again, we have a bunch of boat races. There was a bunch of classes. I'm not a boat person, so I couldn't tell you what a sea hydro is, but I can kind of guess, you know. But at any rate, so runabouts, inboard, outboard, all of those sorts of things are there. And we have big names in races, in racers. So we had Rocky Stone of Wilhelmina, Oregon, who was a championship racer in the Northwest, so he was a big name at the time. And then you've got these other names here, Bud Yeeple. I'm not going to say all their names right, but so you've got some championship racers who are coming to Cottage Grove to race. So this puts some credence on the regattas. It's not just a fun boat race for the community, it's the entire Northwest racers coming in to our town to race. Here's the schedule for the events. We won't spend much time there, but we also, and you'll get a picture of her, Joanne, I'm not going to see the name there, I have the name elsewhere, but she was Miss Oregon of the year for a year. She actually was from Roseburg, but she represented Oregon in the beauty pageants. So she was Miss Oregon, and she attended that year as well. So lots of people wanted to be here. This is the first year we see a Queen's Court. We have Shirley Hillman representing the Rod and Gun Club. Is that still operating? I think it was. Okay. So out in Saginaw, we've still got that operating today. So then you have a few names: Barbara Anderson, Nina Chapman, Doreen Lynn, Bobby Bagwell. I think Bobby was from Drain. Margaret Tarr. She was okay. They had somebody in here that was from Drain. They had a Drain representative somewhere. So okay. And Betty Brown. And then Joanne Amord of Sutherland. I was wrong. It wasn't Roseburg, it was Sutherland. She was Miss Oregon that year. So that dance was held at the Armory. So we see the Armory as a big thing in the day. 1,000 attended the dance. That's a big dance. Big deal. Especially in a town of 2,500. Pageant dance raised funds for the Cottage Grove Hospital. So one of their promotional advertisements talked about your dollar spent for a JC Regatta dance ticket today will mean the health and security for you and your family tomorrow. It will help build a much needed institution in Cottage Grove, a hospital. So this is the hospital. It was on Birch Avenue for years. This dance helped raise funds for that. So we were tying in both the Armory and the hospital, which are other institutions in Cottage Grove. Pictures of the beauties. Yeah. So they're on the steps of the Armory. They're getting their pictures taken. And then at the lake, the Queen's Court represented at the races themselves, so they had a spotlight at the lake. It's a lot of pageantry, a lot of like decorations, and they did it up. They were celebrating. And then the media coverage. It was easy to pull articles all about the Queen's Court. Mentioned the regatta, but it was all about the Queen's Court. Okay. 1948. You've got the schedule for that, and that is actually one of our artifacts down here, so you can see the schedule. And it's a 3-day event now, so we've increased the number of days we've added. And we have now become part of the straightaway championship, 1 mile straightaway championship races. So this is a circuit race. They race all over at different areas in the Northwest. Cottage Grove was one of the places where they did their trials. So they'd come down here, and that was one of the legs of their race. You can't really tell, but it kind of looks like the guy in the front who's waving has a scarf around his head. I don't know if that's a normal accoutrement to racers.
No, it's a beauty queen.
Oh, this one's a hard one to see too, but the photo finish, they had this plastered in the newspaper. It was a photo finish for this particular race. And the boats are interesting looking. Again, I'm not a boat person, but there's some fun boats. Some more pictures, it's hard to see. I put a lot of pictures in here, but it's hard to see them, so I'm a little disappointed with that, but that's okay. So we've got the fast boats, but we also have some sailboats down here. So they did have sailboat races as well as the motorboats. I love this picture here. It's got all the different sailboats running, and you can see some of the crowd on the dock. Now this picture I put in here, but I can't guarantee it's actually one of these regattas. It was in the file with the regattas, but there was no markings on it, no date, nothing to say if this was specifically a regatta picture. But it shows a heck of a crowd at the lake. So I'm assuming this is representative of, if not one, of the pictures from the regattas. It's hard to see because of the pictures, but there's a lot of people hanging out at the lake. I don't think I've ever seen that many people at the lake before. Okay, so in 48, we have parades now, so we've added to the festivities. 35 floats, kind of listed some of the float themes there. The scouts were in it. There's a scout in the room, so I'll mention that. And Queen Anne's float was sponsored by the Business and Professional Women's Club, and it came in first prize and won $100. Go Women's Club. The other thing they had was a pet parade, and in the paper they marked this as the first pet parade since before the war. And if you've ever watched the Morlock films, how many of you have seen the Morlock films? Not a lot. So we have the Morlock films at the Cottage Grove Historical Society if you want them. But one of the features of those films is all of these kids' pet parades, and those were from the early 40s, late 30s. So when the war came, pet parades kind of went out the window, and this year they're bringing them back, and they had 100 kids march their pets right down Main Street here. So it's kind of that, again, we're coming out of this wartime era, and we're really back into celebrating. It's a 3-day event. 8,900 people attended. So we're a little bit down from the second one, but we still have, again, our population isn't there. So we doubled the size of Cottage Grove for the weekend. 2,600 cars and 120 power boats. They did not list how many sailboats. So 124 power boats in the various races for the weekend. They also included a kids' day with swimming and diving contests. They had the Queen's Rally, the Coronation Bowl at the Armory again, and the Rod and Gun Club Indian Water Pageant, which took place down in Saginaw, and the Warm Springs Reservation came down and put on this pageant with, I can't remember, the artist guy. Drenner? Yeah. So he helped put these on, and the Warm Springs Reservation came down. Big parade. Do you see that very well? So you've got the Queen sitting in her convertible driving down Main Street. You got Coast to Coast in the background. You got some of those older shops there. If you remember, Coast to Coast used to be on Main Street. All right. So here we have the Queen's Court and all her accoutrements, all of her princesses. And this year we also see a fun addition, which is the Junior Court. So we have a junior king and a junior queen. So we're gonna get back to that in a minute. But we've got all the little kids in front and then the older gals in the back. So we had, did I have this backwards? Oh, okay. No, I didn't, okay. So that year we had Queen Ada Carter, and I'm going to jump to it in a second. But a couple other names out here kind of popped out to me when I was reading this. So Diane Morlock. If you're familiar, we used to have the Diane Theater. This was who the theater was named after. The Morlock family had the Diane Theater. So this was their daughter. Levon Stokes, Betty Durst, and Patty Lee River. So a couple of familiar names if you're a long-term Cottage Grove resident. Saturday evening, the dance was held at the Armory. It was standing room only. They didn't give a head count, but they had standing room only. And they added the junior court with Queen Judith Radke and King Mike Kent. So we've got Queen Ada Carter there and all her, she had a scepter and everything. And then we have Junior Queen Judith Radke. Isn't she cute? And Judith is actually with us today. So she's sitting up here. So she was the junior queen, or junior princess. Junior queen. One of the things that she has done recently is donated some items to the Cottage Grove Museum. We have a few of them up here, including her dress. Sure, absolutely. Thank you. So this is the dress she's wearing.
Adorable. Sash, bow.
She's got her crown, which you can also see in the picture. So that's there. And the award cup.
And the bathing suit.
Yep. And then I don't know if you want to hold that one up or not, but okay, let's see if we can tie it there.
Cutest yet. Ready?
Yep. So this is the swimsuit she wore. And we also have a couple of pictures up here, so when you get a chance, you can come up.
I'll just hold them up. And
okay, yeah. So she's.
I think that's it.
Okay, I'm gonna reclip here. If I can. There we go. Okay. So that's always fun when we have somebody who's actually here. So, in addition to the queen, the junior queen, we had the junior king, Mike Kent. So he grew up in Cottage Grove. He heard about the presentation we were going to do back in January, but that got canceled. And I don't know if he heard about the beeper show or not. But somehow he heard about us doing this. Might have been on Facebook. So he sent us a picture, and this is the picture he sent us, because he's still out and about as well. And he said his sister is behind him. She's the one looking up at him. I have her name, Patty. Patty was her name. And his dad was Larry, so Larry Kent, who owned Kent's Market, which is also the market that's in the background there, Kent's Market, that operated here on Main Street. So he's still about 2, which is kind of fun. Yep, he's got his cap. It'd be fun if we had those here too, but. All right, so there's I separated those, so you've already seen all the images separated, but there's the 3 of them together. So there's your court for the year. Yeah, the dress is gorgeous. I don't know if you can tell. You can't tell from there. But, that's the dress that Judith is wearing. But the Queen's dress is all lace. It's really pretty. So moving on to 1949. So this is the last year that I could find evidence of the regatta happening. So if it went on, they just didn't put it in the newspaper as much. So I doubt that was the case. The other problem is we're out of the range of the newspaper archives until the next set is put up, thanks to the Woodards. So at some point we'll be able to see into the 50s and know a little bit more. But the resources I had access to, this is where they ended. So in 49, we again had all the different types of races, outboard, stock races, the West Coast 1-mile time trials, and the 2-man rowboat. So we added some rowboats too. And again, we had a parade, a Queen's Rally. This is where we add a street show that includes bubble gum blowing contest, old-time fiddler, cracker eating. I don't know, you could make a contest of that, but there you go. And then penny pitching. So they tossed pennies. I remember the cherry pit spitting contest in Bohemian Mining Days, but never the penny pitching. They added an auction and a log rolling contest. I'm assuming the log rolling was at the lake because you have to have water for that. That would have been fun. I've never seen a live log rolling contest, but I think it would be fun. So then we had Queen Ida Rand, who did some promotional vote for me kind of campaigning. So we had her in her swimsuit out on Main Street. It looked like a fire truck that she's campaigning on.
Yeah, she was sponsored by the volunteer fire department.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Now, are you saying that as a joke, or do you know that?
I know that.
Okay, very good. So that makes sense. She had access to the fire truck. Norma Bradley, Bonnie Kloster, and Pat Scott were also part of the court. Again, we had the ball at the Armory. This time we only have 500 in attendance, though, so we're kind of dwindling. Although 500 at the Armory is still a good number. And here they are on Main Street during the parade. So it appears that they stopped after that. I did not find any record of attendance for the 1949 regatta. So I'm assuming if the number was good, they would have published it in the paper. But I could be wrong. So we kind of see it fizzle to an end. I don't know the reasons, but lowering attendance may have been part of it. Jarena Lake was completed in 49, so that's a possible reason that the draw stopped coming to Cottage Grove Lake. And then who knows, there may have been, because I know Dexter still has, I got an email the other day saying Dexter just had a regatta, so I know Dexter's had regattas for years. When I was growing up, that was where they were held. So they just may have moved them closer to more urban areas because it was easier to draw people from Eugene to Dexter than from Eugene to Cottage Grove, maybe? Fern Ridge, yep. So, but Fern Ridge was finished before Cottage Grove, so I don't know why they didn't start there, other than Cottage Grove put this on themselves. So the other thing I figured out when I was doing the research on this, the JCs were the ones that did most of the organizing and promotion of this big event. So it was a JC's event. And somebody asked me who the JCs were, and I just thought, well, they were a civic group in town. They did civic stuff, right? So I did a little research. The JCs were the junior chamber members. So junior chamber members are the JCs. So I think at the time they were 18 to 35 until the laws changed and you couldn't drink till you were 21, so then they changed the ages of the JCs. So the JCs were the Junior Chamber of Commerce. And there's actually a couple of those in here from the research I did. One of them's over there. I was gonna say, the name popped up in my research, so.
Hey, wait a minute. At 35, you were called an exhausted rooster.
Oh, an exhausted rooster?
You have to get out.
And then the other thing I did note here in my notes was Dexter Dam was completed in 55. So there's a little bit of a gap between this ending and Dexter Lake being available. But. All right, so future races. We have had other regattas at Dorena Lake and at Cottage Grove Lake, but they weren't part of this annual JC's Cottage Grove Regatta event. So we had races, but not the same thing. And then, here you can sort of see it. So I found this mystery article in my research that was in a file labeled Cottage Grove Regatta. And the top, it said Register Guard, 11 July 1947, although the 4 is obviously written over a different number. So I was reading it, trying to connect it, but in the article, it mentions Dorena Lake, so the regatta was at Dorena Lake. And I thought, in 47? That's not what my other stuff says. And then it mentioned Baker Bay. And I thought, okay, so definitely Dorena Lake, but that doesn't fit with anything else I have. So this article was throwing me for a loop, was confusing me. Then you can kind of see here, the reason the number, the date up there is hard to read is because this is a copy of a copy of a copy of a newsletter or newspaper. So the date is hard to read. So I had to try and find some other clues. So the first thing I said was, when was Dorena Lake finished? 1949. So then I thought, what other clues? So it couldn't have been 47. The date at the top says 47. Oops, I can still see it there. So it definitely wasn't 47 if it was at Dorena Lake, right? So what other clues in there might tell you this, when to narrow this down to in terms of dates? Any sleuths out there? Okay, so that was the first one. Dorena Lake was created in 1949. So that tells us one thing. My next question, oh, sorry, say that again? First Bohemian Mining Days was 59. Because it does, the article does talk about Bohemian Mining Days, so now we know we're at least 59 or later.
Centennial celebration.
Correct. 59 was a centennial celebration, which then turned into Bohemian Mining Days after that. You're absolutely right. So the other thing I saw was Baker Bay, and I thought, well, when did Baker Bay become Baker Bay? So I looked that up, and it wasn't dedicated until 56. So again, we're bouncing this number down the road. So then I said, this is a Register Guard, so it was printed daily. And so I wanted to figure out when July 11th occurred. And maybe if it was, for example, in 67, it was a Tuesday, probably not when they're going to start the races, right? Possible, but probably not. So then I went and looked at those. 57, 67, 87, 97. So 87 and 97 are kind of contenders, if you ask me. Do I have an answer? Nope. So we've narrowed it down to know this doesn't belong in the same file as these Cottage Grove Regattas because it is not part of the Cottage Grove Regatta articles.
Who wrote the 1947 up there?
I do not know. One of our kleptomaniacs from back in the day. I have no idea. So that was a mystery. It threw me, but I finally decided just to put it to the side and finish my research on the rest of it, and then I just came back to this one for fun to try and solve it, but I didn't solve it. But once we have them up in the newspapers up on the Oregon website, I'll be able to type in some of the sentences and go right to it and know exactly when it was. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's my presentation. I want to say Cottage Grove Historical Society, here's our website, our research library. If you've never been to our research library, come on down. We have a lot of articles and files and books and all kinds of stuff for you to research. Anything Cottage Grove history. If we don't have it, we can point you to somebody who probably does. Our monthly presentations are the third Saturday at 10 a.m. This month we have the Murphy migration. So we had a group of families coming out from Murphy, North Carolina in the 40s and 50s to come out and work in the timber mills around Cottage Grove. And we've got some of their descendants who are going to come and talk about their family's history. So if you want to come on down, that's 10 a.m. on the third Saturday, which is the 20th this month. So, and there you go. The other thing is, these items are at the Cottage Grove Museum, so they're on the corner of Birch and H. I can't do exactly what Terrace does, but there you go. And they have, these items right now are not on display, but I'm sure they will be at some point in the summer. So they're going to do the display for the summer. What do you have on display right now? The quilts? Okay, so they've got a bunch of quilts on display now. So they also have the Titanic quilt, so if you've never seen the Titanic coat, not quilt, sorry, come on down and they'll show that to you. So there you go. Thank you very much.